So sit down, get yourself a cup of coffee or tea and a snack because this video is not going to be short. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Cheryl and today I'm here to bring you, I don't know if it's long awaited, I did have a few requests for it, but it is my review for New Moon by Stephenie Meyer. This is the second book in the Twilight Saga series. There are 4 books. I already have the third one ready to read and I'm not ready to review it. I haven't read it yet, but I'm ready to read the next one because the series gets worse as it goes on. You would think it would get better, but it gets worse. Oof. Anyway, this will be not spoiler-free. I know most of my reviews are spoiler-free. However, I have a lot to say about this series, plus it's been out forever, so I don't feel bad about doing spoilery talks about it. So, let's just start with the basic writing of this book. Let's just start with the writing. As with Twilight, the writing was shit. This book contains single-handedly one of the worst lines I have ever read written. Ever. I have tabbed it, specially. Arrow started to laugh. Ha ha ha, he chuckled. It also says ha ha ha, he chortled, and ha ha ha, he laughed 3 more times on the same page. Like, I guess it's 2 more times, but 2 more times on the same page. But Arrow started to laugh, ha ha ha, he chuckled. It is single-handedly one of the worst lines I have ever read. Ever. And I remembered vaguely that it was in this book, but when I got to it, I was like, fuck yes! I get to rant about this! And so I made sure to tab it. But the writing in general was not good in this book. It wasn't good in the first one, it's not good in this one, and I had the same issue I had with the first one, which I tabbed especially in this blue, and that is Stephenie Meyer has a habit of just, like, picking random words in a paragraph and, like, grabbing a thesaurus and finding a fancier word to use than the one she probably originally put in, and it felt very out of place, it felt very forced, it didn't make sense, and, like, yes, authors can use big words, I'm not stupid, it's not like I'm not saying, how dare you use big words. What I'm saying, how does a book that has, like, single-handedly one of the worst lines ever also have a line that says, he examined my obstinate expression? Like, it just feels like she thesaurused it, and I noticed the same thing in the first book, and like I said, it probably wouldn't feel so out of place if the writing wasn't just shit around these, like, fancy words, and it just doesn't make sense. Don't know why she does it. The writing, just in general, is not good. The paragraphs don't flow. There's really major, like, scene jumps without any sort of explanation in between the scene jumps. Bad writing. So I think I'm going to get into the plot next, and then we'll go from there. The general plot of this book is that Edward and Bella are super happy in the beginning. Oh, yay, they're so happy. We're a couple now. And then just one day, Edward and his fam decide to leave. They give, like, a couple reasons for it. First, they were like, we've been in this town for a long time. People are going to start noticing that Carlisle and the rest have not aged whatsoever. But the other reason is Edward is like, I can't be around you anymore. I want you to live your human life. I'm a vampire. And he was like, I'm leaving. And he told Bella that he's like, I never loved you. And left her in the woods. And then she was a ghost for essentially 5, 6, 7 months after that. She had, like, no feelings. She just went through life doing the motions. During this time, she does become closer friends with Jacob. She decides to become a thrill seeker because every time she does something dangerous or is in a dangerous situation, she hears Edward's voice telling her, bitch, what you doing? And then she's like, oh, and she gets addicted to that, and so she starts, like, thrill seeking. And one of the things she does is she jumps off a cliff in the middle of a storm for some fucking reason, and she gets saved by Jacob. However, if you remember, Alice has these, like, the vision of the futures. The vision of the futures. Wow. Alice can see the future, and in her seeing the future, she sees Bella jump. She doesn't see her resurface. She panics, tells Rosalie for whatever reason, and was like, hey, Bella's dead! And Rosalie, because Rosalie's a bitch for some reason, goes to Edward and be like, hey, your love is dead. And Edward's like, well, I gotta go die now, and goes to the Volturi, who are, like, the most powerful, like, they're like 3,000 years old, so they're like the most powerful vampires in the world, and he's like, I've got to provoke them some way. So his like whole thing is they're having a huge festival in Italy, and so he's going to interrupt the festival, by walking out into the sunlight so his sparkly, sparkly chest will be exposed to the world. Alice kind of realizes that maybe she didn't do the right thing, goes to see if Bella's alright, when lo and behold, Bella's alive. She's like, oh shit, I done fucked up. And then she decides that, then they get on a plane, go to Italy, rescue Edward. There's a whole, scene with them just being, Bella, dramatically running through the crowd. It's ridiculous. Anyway, Edward ends up not doing that, but now the Volturi know that Edward told a human about their existence, which is, a no-no. And so they're like, you have two options. You can either kill Bella or you can turn her. And Edward's like, no, I don't want to do that. Either of those things. And Bella's just like, bitch, please, turn me. I want to turn. And he's like, no, I will not turn. I will not damn you to eternal damnation. I have no soul. Or some dramatic shit like that. And so the end of it is basically Bella just, getting all of the Cullens around and is like, how many of you want me to be a vampire? And they basically unanimously, except for Edward and Rosalie, are like, be a vampire. And Carlisle Cullen, the doctor man, was like, I'll do it. I'm a doctor. I'm around blood all the time. I know I won't kill you. And she's like, cool. When am I going to do this? Tonight? And he was like, well, maybe you shouldn't leave Charlie again, because Charlie her dad, has gotten, the short end of the stick all the time. Bella just up and disappears for days at a time, won't tell him, and then when she is there, she's just, no emotion. This poor man is just like, what the hell's going on? What am I doing wrong? Anyway, so he's like, maybe we should wait. So she's like, okay, we'll wait till we graduate. And that's, 4 or 5 months from the end of this book, I think. And then later that night, when she's at home and Edward's, snuck through her window again, she's like, but my deepest secret is I want you to be the one to turn me. And he's like, I might kill you, though. And she's like, I'll take that risk. So he's like, okay, but on one condition, you have to marry me. And she's like, no, I don't want to marry you. I'm only 18. So she's okay with becoming a vampire, eternally damning herself to stay 18 forever, become a creature of the night, but she refuses to get married because that's a commitment. Does anyone else see why that's weird? Anyway, so that's the general plot of this book. Jacob is thrown in the middle quite a bit. He and Bella become friends, and throughout the entire thing just becomes a fuckboy. Not that he wasn't already, but becomes more of a fuckboy. So I guess the next logical thing would be to talk about the characters and what I didn't like about them. So let's talk about Bella. Okay, so she was super happy, I guess, in the beginning of the book because Edward was there. And then Edward told her that he didn't love her, and she was like, but you told me you loved me. Now keep in mind, when this happened, they had been together for 6-7 months at most. But she was like, but we are soulmates, and you told me you loved me, and why are you leaving me? And then he's like, bye, bitch, and he leaves her in the woods. She collapses, lays there for just hours at a time, ends up getting found because Charlie sent out a rescue mission because, he's a cop, and his daughter disappeared. And so she is found, and then she is she's already a fairly emotionless character to begin with, but she is like a ghost, like I said, an empty shell of herself. She is going through the motions, and she's that way for 6 or 7 months. So as long, if not longer, than her relationship with Edward. She is like, I don't feel things. She's like, she's like, I've lost all my friends. I don't do any of it. And I get depression, and I get feelings of abandonment and things like that. But she has known this dude for 5 or 6, she's only been with him, maybe not even 5 or 6 months by the time this happens, and she is so distraught and torn up about this, the fact that she can't even function on her daily life. Charlie has to basically be like, you need to eat, you need to do this, and she had never shown signs of depression or anything in the first book. It just didn't make sense. It didn't make sense for her to be so torn up about this one boyfriend leaving her, even though, like I said, she had been there for in that relationship rather, for only a minute. And now she's like, well, my world is over. I literally can't function as a human being anymore because I don't have this man. And that was not healthy. It was not good. And she didn't seem to recognize, even when she got better, as a character, she didn't seem to recognize what was wrong about that. Even Charlie, like, later in the book was like, he's like, this wasn't normal. This wasn't a normal breakup. What the fuck is going on? Of course, he doesn't know any of, like, the supernatural aspects in this book, but it didn't make sense. And then when Bella decided to be, like, a thrill seeker, like, on one hand, she was like, this is kind of fucked up. But on the other hand, she's like, who cares about anyone? I'm just going to go race motorcycles. I'm going to go, jump off a cliff and not think about the consequences. I'm not suicidal whatsoever. In fact, I refuse to, like, acknowledge the fact that I could be suicidal, but I'm going to do this because, God forbid, I don't hear Edward's voice. And Bella was just a kind of a bitch to Jacob. Like, Jacob was dealing with his own thing, like, he's becoming a werewolf in this book, or whatnot. But, okay, this next little snippet I'm going to talk about is going to be Bella and Jacob. So everyone knows that this is a big love triangle between the two. 3, I guess, obviously 3. So it's a big love triangle. Well, I never, in any situation, ever believe a woman needs or is required to get with a man because she is nice to him. That is stupid. That is not how life works. And I don't think Bella at any point was required or obligated to be with Jacob because she was nice with him. Just gonna lay that out there. Nice to him. Just gonna lay that out there. That's how it works. But I will say that this was the biggest example, I guess, of a person leading on a man. Like I said, I don't believe Bella was ever obligated to get with Jacob. But I also understood Jacob's confusion, because she was like, she would tell him, we need boundaries. I'm not interested in being more than friends. And this was Jacob's fault, because he would be like, well, one day you'll change your mind. Bitch, she said no. She said no. It's not how that works. So she'll be like, Jacob, I need to put up these boundaries. And then she'll, like, hold his hand and tell him that she loves him and that she needs him and she can't function without him. And, like, what is he supposed to think? I struggle with this because, like I said, she's not obligated to be with him because she's nice to him, but at the same time, if there has ever been a case of someone, like, giving mixed signals, it's this girl, because Jesus Christ, if you tell someone you love them, that you're going to die without them, and that you need them to function, what are they supposed to think, especially when you know that person loves you? Also, why is every man, boy, child, person in love with Bella? Because if you remember from my first video, or if you've read the series, Mr. Mike Newton comes back briefly, because he's also in love with Bella. For some reason, he loved Bella from the moment he laid eyes on her in the first book, because, she's so gorgeous and perfect, even though she's not. I don't get it, because there was, like, that, oh my god, there was the most awkward, cringy scene in this book where there was, like, a double date. It was supposed to be, like, a group date or a group friend outing. Everyone bailed, and it was just it was just Bella, Jacob, and Mr. Mike Newton. It was so fucking awkward. And the whole point was just so that the two boys could argue over Bella, and it was so stupid. It was so stupid. But I've digressed. Bella's leading this poor man on. No wonder he's like, you're my soulmate. Now this is gonna lead into discussions about Jacob. I had a really hard time, like, coming up with what I wanted to say for this video about Jacob, because I don't like this character. I don't like him, but I don't like him more so for his actions in the next 2 books, in Eclipse and specifically Breaking Dawn. Oh, I have issues with him in Breaking Dawn the most. So when I'm trying to think of, like, what I want to say about this book, how I want to review Jacob as a character, how I want to review it, I had to separate it, because Jacob hasn't done those heinous actions in this book. So if I was reading the series for the first time, I wouldn't know what he's done. So I would have to, to judge him and judge the book based off of solely what happened in this book, not later on. Even though he fucking imprints on a baby. What? But I digress. I didn't like Jacob I didn't like him in this book, but I hate him more for the later books. Does that make sense? So in this book, like I said, he was just kind of a fuckboy. He starts off like the normal long-haired, cool, like cute little teenage Jacob. He's like, I'm younger than you, I do things. I'm around. His father's Billy. Billy's friends with Charlie. They know each other so that's how Bella and Jacob know each other. They met each other in the first book. All that fun stuff, right? Well, then Bella is like, oh, I can hear Edward's voice if I'm a thrill seeker. So she finds these worn down motorcycles. Someone gives them to her for free. So she knows that Jacob works on motorcycles and cars and things, so she takes them to him and is like, hey, can we do anything about these? Can we fix them up? He thinks that she just wants to hang out with him. She doesn't tell him her, like, real motivations, and he's like, yeah, cool. And she's like, will you teach me how to ride? He's like, yeah, cool. So they start hanging out, and then, like, halfway through the book, he stops talking to her. He's like, something's, like, before that, he was like, something's wrong. There's this, like, gang or cult in my town with Sam, I think Quill is his last name, Sam something, is the ringleader, essentially, and Jacob is like, I don't like this, my friend Emery left me to go be in this cult, he's not the same, what's going on? Well then, like, halfway through the book, like I said, he just suddenly cuts all contact with Bella, to the point, and once again, this is where I'm saying, like, Bella is sending mixed signals, because I get it hurts when a friend cuts you off, but she called Jacob in one day every half hour from the time, like, from noon until, like, 10 o'clock at night. Every half hour. Like, that's not just friendship. That's obsession more than anything. Anyway, he cuts her off because he's turning into a werewolf. And he's like, oh, it's so painful. I don't know what I'm doing. And so, it turns out the cult in town or whatever is actually a werewolf pack. Who would have guessed? And he joins the pack. Eventually, he and Bella start talking again, and now he's, like, ripped and walks around shirtless all the time and has his hair cut, and he refers to Edward as a filthy blood-sucking leech and all this stuff, and Bella's like, you need to calm yourself. It's ridiculous. Jacob becomes such an asshole, too. Like, he was so friendly and sweet in the beginning of the book. I mean, I didn't like him, but he was still friendly and sweet. But the moment he had, like, I guess learned about what Edward and the Cullens were and all of that, the moment he learned about it, the moment his, like, entire personality changed. Even though he just learned about it for, like, the first time, he acted like these old grudges between the two supernatural creatures were something that he has always felt. He's always had a prejudice against vampires. But no, he just learned about them in the last, like, 10 minutes, and he's like, oh, these are my mortal enemies, and I absolutely hate them, and I absolutely hate anyone who associates with them. Oh, there's just so many stupid things that happen in this book because of Jacob, and because of Bella, and because of miscommunication. Oh, I hate the miscommunication trope. When Edward calls to see where Bella is or what's going down, and Jacob answers the phone and tells Edward, because he thinks it's Carlisle, that Charlie's at the funeral, because Carlisle, which is Edward in disguise, is asking where Charlie is specifically. And he's like, oh yeah, he's at the funeral. And of course, Edward thinks it's Bella's funeral, but it's actually the funeral of his friend. And just, it's so stupid. I fucking hate miscommunication as a trope. Also, why do these fucking vampires sparkle? It is the stupidest thing. Also, when Edward finally reappeared, let's just talk about Edward for a minute. In the beginning, he was just like, love you. You're the greatest thing that's ever happened to me. I have lived 200 years and I'm gonna, I don't know, I only want to live the next 200 with you. Or he's like, I love you so much. I've never known any feeling like this until I met you, the meek and boring 17-year-old girl who falls down all the time. There are so many references to her being clumsy. I don't know if you can see it or not. I have light pink tabs. Those tabs are all throughout this book, and I only tabbed, like, references to her being clumsy either through herself or through other characters saying she's clumsy. There are so many references to this girl being clumsy. Like, I'm clumsy. I get injured all the time. In fact, I've got a big bruise right here because I get injured all the time. But I don't say every 5 minutes, I'm clumsy. Did you know I'm clumsy? Oh, I can't do that. I'll fall down. Like, but anyway, I have digressed yet again. Edward in the beginning of this book is like, I love you. You're the best thing that's ever happened to me. I can never live without you. Then he just suddenly 180s and is like, bitch, bye. And he's like, I never loved you to begin with. And she's like, all right, that's doesn't make sense, but okay. And then when he comes back, he's like, I can't believe you believed me. I told you I loved you, and then I told you I didn't love you. How dare you believe me when I said I didn't love you? And Bella's like, what? And I was like, what? Because he got mad at her for believing him, but he told her. Like, in all sincerity, he told her. But I know that if she had said, no, you don't, you do love me, he would have, like, still left or fought her over it. Like, I don't get what his endgame there was, because he's proven time and time again that he abandoned her. What is she supposed to think? Now, if he said, I don't love you, but then didn't leave, maybe she would, like, not doubt it, but he just immediately left. What is she supposed to think? And for him to suddenly get mad, also, it doesn't make sense, because he's like, fuck you, I don't love you, all this kind of stuff. And then he's like, well, she's dead now, I gotta die. I've lived 200 years, but I can't live without this meek, boring 18-year-old. I've got to kill myself. And so it doesn't make sense. Why is he throwing his life away for a girl who just has no personality at all? So, Edward, what you doing, buddy? But overall, this book was still just shit. There was just a lot of things I didn't like about it. There was still girl hate. Basically, Bella grouped her friends as the good friends and the evil friends. Her good friends are Mike Newton and I don't even remember the other girl's name. Some girl, Andrea, maybe? I don't know. Some girl who was just nice to her. And then the evil ones were her first friend Jessica and stuff. But these people were evil because they stopped talking to Bella. And they stopped trying to hang out with Bella. And whenever Bella would be around, they just kind of would be like, what are you doing? Because Bella stopped talking to them for months at a time. Just months. And when they finally did talk or hang out, Bella would just not be there mentally. She would just ignore everyone. And so her friends were finally like, I'm moving on. I'm not going to stick around and do this because it doesn't make sense. And Bella was just kind of snappy when she would talk. It's not really their fault that Bella was a shitty friend to begin with. And also, Bella has always had a lot of girl hate. There was a lot of girl hate in the first book, too. But, yeah, just the characterizing her friends as evil. Or the girls as evil because they weren't immediately nice to her after, Bella snubbed them for months at a time. So, yeah, this book just had a lot of issues. I don't know how the series, keeps getting worse, but it does. Part of me is looking forward to the next book. Part of me is not. I don't even remember what the next book's about. I knew the first one, the plot in general. I knew the second one. This one was when Edward left and is when Jacob became more of a character. And I know the last one is Bella having the baby. But I don't remember what, is the third. I think, do the vampires and the werewolves war with each other? Do they just... does the fight come to a head? I don't know. So stay tuned to see my thoughts about that one when I read it, because if it's like these two books, I'm gonna have a lot of thoughts, because I'm gonna hate the book. The series just gets worse, the writing doesn't improve, the characters get worse, and I think that's the thing. Twilight wasn't good, but at least it was just, it is what it is. I don't know if that makes sense at all. There wasn't much pomp and circumstance around it. It was just a girl falling in love with a vampire, but now you've werewolves. Also, Bella had no problem accepting the idea of vampires. She had no problem being like, oh, you're a vampire, that's cool. But the moment Jacob was like, I'm a werewolf, she was like, what? No, that's not possible. And she couldn't wrap her head around it. Bitch, you just accepted you acknowledged and you accepted the idea of one supernatural creature, but then you cannot fathom the idea of another one? That don't make sense. Nothing about this book made sense. It was just bad. Like I said, tabbed it all the fuck up. These hot pink tabs are problematic things, most of which I've talked about, most of which have to do with Jacob and his shitty behavior, because he was one entitled motherfucker, is what he was. And yeah. Anyway, that is my long-winded review for New Moon by Stephanie Meyer. We'll be continuing the series. Like I said, I already have Eclipse on my shelf. Ready to dive into that at some point. Tab that up, see what the fuss is about in the third one. This series is bad. If you haven't read it yet, you really don't need to, because I have just broken everything down for you. Told you all about it, so yeah. Anyway, Thank you guys for watching. As always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Follow me on all of my social media, which is always linked down below. See what I'm up to in my daily life on Twitter and such. And I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!